Um, and why don't we just get started? Why don't we just get started? Obviously, my name is Jennifer, and I'm a humanist. I'm going to be your host today. I am a writer and a humanist activist. I'm the former executive director for the Humanists of Florida Association. I spent 7 years with them. I am also the author of the new book, The Humanist Approach to Happiness, Practical Wisdom. And I blog. I have a blog and a podcast on the humanist approach to happiness, and I consult with people about promoting humanism and so forth and so on. I have a website. I have a podcast. I'm the Tampa Examiner for Humanism and Free Thought for Examiner.com. And I have a monthly column in the Bradenton Herald newspaper about humanism. I share that column with a couple of priests and a rabbi, and then there's me. I know it sounds like a joke, right? But it's kind of cool. It's the Faith Matters column, and once a month they have a humanist write something about our viewpoint on whatever. So what am I going to talk about today? Well, obviously the title is The Pursuit of Happiness as a Humanist Mandate. I'm going to cover initially what is humanism, because I don't assume everybody knows what humanism is. We're going to talk about why humanists are so concerned with happiness, and what we mean by happiness, because that's one of those terms that has to be defined. Thank you. I can't spell your name. How promoting the humanist approach to happiness can make the world a better place. That if you are a humanist, it's probably a good idea to be open about that. Why am I going to talk about this? Well, humanism is one of the most influential and consequently most maligned philosophies of all time. And especially in modern times. But it arises in every culture and in every time it arises, the powers that be that have religious agendas hate humanism. They malign it. The thing is that even though it's so influential in our society, most people have never heard about the term. They've never even heard the term. And if they have no idea what it is. And if you're among one of those who's just joining us and you don't know what humanism is, that's not your fault. That's the fault of the humanists, because we don't do a very good job of explaining our philosophy to others. It's a personal philosophy. We really don't care if you're a humanist as well or not. This is how we choose to live our lives. And I'm going to make the case today that if you are a humanist, we need to change that. I think one of the reasons why humanists don't spend a lot of time talking about humanism is because we're kind of embarrassed to talk about it. I've been in the movement in leadership positions for 7, 8, 9 years now, and I can tell you that most of our journals, most humanist journals, don't talk about humanism. Our e-zines don't talk about humanism. And if you go to a humanist group meeting, it's unlikely that the humanists in that meeting are going to be spending much time talking about humanism. And you're going to have to trust me on this. I've been a leader in the movement for about 9 years. Humanists don't spend a lot of time talking about the philosophy of humanism. So if you don't know about humanism, it's not your fault. Here's the problem. We're a bit embarrassed to talk about our philosophy because A, it's really simple, and B, we don't like to proselytize. We're really big proponents of freedom of religion and belief, and that means respecting other people to believe differently than us. And finally, I think one of the reasons we don't spend a lot of time talking about humanism is because humanism is primarily concerned with human happiness. Like, that's our goal. And that doesn't seem very substantial. Human happiness, what does that mean? And humanists are very, very serious people. We tend to be intellectual geeks. And so talking about something as flighty as human happiness just isn't something we're prone to do in public. We find it easier to talk about the separation of church and state. the importance of science, secularism, skepticism, all the more tangible, meaty topics we can get ourselves into. Happiness just doesn't seem all that important a topic compared to the other things that we could be discussing that are more immediate. And I'd like to change that a little bit today by actually talking about the philosophy of humanism. Not only will I boldly and unembarrassedly tell you all about the philosophy, I'm also going to tell you about how we, as humanists, approach the very important business of being happy, and why our approach to happiness can help make the world a better place, which is part of our goal as humanists. Now, what do I hope to accomplish with this by doing this presentation today? Well, several things. And I'm sorry I use my hands a lot when I talk. Okay. First, I'm guessing that some of you guys listening to this, guys and gals listening to this and watching this, are already humanists and maybe don't know it yet. And at the end of this conversation, that maybe you'll go, wow, I'm a humanist, how cool. I'm hoping that if you're already a humanist, you already self-identify as a humanist, that you will become more comfortable talking to others about that fact that you are a humanist and what that means for you. And finally, if you're watching this and you're not a humanist, that's fine too, not everybody is. I hope you at least come away knowing a little bit more about what humanism is and what motivates humanists to do the things they do. I'm not here to change your mind or proselytize to you or convince you to adopt a new philosophy. You're either a humanist and you agree with what I'm saying, or you don't, and that's fine too. Hi there, Larry. Okay, so the other thing is I obviously have a book, and I'm hoping you'll like what I say and be interested in it. If you registered for thank you. If you register, oh, you're back, Ray? Good, you're back, Ray. Okay, so if you registered for this presentation, I sent you a link that that has a 30% off on both the hard copy and the e-version version of the books. I'm going to include a link to that registration page now in case you didn't and want to get that discount after listening to this. All right. So let's get started on the actual talk. For those of you who joined a little bit late, I am recording this, and it's going to be available on the web afterwards. I'm laughing at Marfita. Okay, so humanism and happiness. Let's start with humanism. Humanism is a philosophy of life. Our goal as humanists is to live an ethical life of personal fulfillment that aspires to the greater good of humanity. Or in plain English, okay, so ethical lives of personal fulfillment that aspire to the greater good of humanity. Oh no, you have a commercial. Okay. Or in plain English, live life, love other people, leave the world a better place. Good, Ray, you're back. Yay. And that love life, live other people, leave the world a better place. I actually wrote that motto when I was 11 years old. This might come as a shock to everybody here that is a humanist, but I was raised as a humanist. I'm third generation on one side, possibly fourth or fifth generation on the other side of my family. All right, so I have free thought and humanism on both sides of my family going back at least 2 or 3 generations. So it's not surprising to me that, at 11 I wrote my personal motto, and it's a statement of humanism: live life, love other people, leave the world a better place. Yes, it was lucky of me. Anyways, the humanist philosophy encourages us to be good people. And humanists think that we accomplish being a good person by being an ethical person, being a compassionate person, and being a responsible person. Simple, right? Very simple. Be ethical, compassionate, and responsible. And that's what I consider to be the true Holy Trinity, what really matters in your personal behavior. Here's the kicker about humanism. We also think you can only be responsible if you take the time to make good decisions. It's not enough to want to do good. You have to actually think through your problems to have good outcomes. And that's just quick picture of the book. That's what my book's about. It's about how to make good decisions in your life. Now, most of my talk is going to be about humanist ethics and the importance of compassion to the humanist approach to happiness. But because I don't want you to think that ethics and compassion are all there is to humanism, I'm going to spend a little tiny bit of time right now talking about how humanists go about making good decisions, because it's extremely important to humanism, extremely important. Okay, in order to act ethically and with compassion, we have to make good decisions. And the way humanists go about making good decisions is through the practice of free thought, skepticism, and critical thinking. Right? It isn't enough to be compassionate and want to do good if you can't think clearly about the ethical problems you are facing. Your solutions to those problems are not going to be very effective. How you think about your problems matters. This is why humanists spend so much time preaching critical thinking and free thought, because it matters. And I've got a cat on my lap. Say hi to the cat, everybody. This is Harrison, and he's going to get off right now. Okay, so let's give an example of what you think about matters. If your field needs rain, and you think the reason it isn't raining is because God is mad at you, your solutions are going to be geared towards making your God happy. So he'll allow it to rain. And traditionally that's done by making some sort of sacrifice. This is, how the Aztecs solved it. They made human sacrifices, right? They didn't have rain. They thought their gods were angry, and they wanted to make their gods happy so that it would rain, so they killed some people. Now, even my 5-year-old son knows that killing people isn't going to make it rain because it's completely unrelated to the weather. The humanist approach to this problem is to actually find out why it isn't raining. And we use science to do that. And then we plan accordingly. So if you find out through science that it isn't raining because of weather patterns that are beyond your control, you might actually take the step of digging a canal to irrigate your field. Long story short, the reason humanists practice free thought and skepticism and critical thinking is because we actually want to solve our problems, not just pretend to solve our problems, but actually have a solution that we have good confidence in that's going to actually work. Again, the humanist approach isn't just about morality, although that's a huge part of what we do. It also has to do with how we think. We have no prescriptions on what to think. You can think anything you want. We just encourage people to think clearly through the use of free thought, skepticism, and critical thinking. This is why when you read humanist journals, we're mostly writing about critical thinking and applying critical thinking to problems. From our perspective, the hardest part of being a good person isn't the morality part. It's the making sure you make a good reasoned decision part. That's the hard part. Wanting to be good isn't hard. Thinking through the problems well so that you have a good ethical solution is the hard part. That's why we spend so much time talking about free thought and critical thinking and skepticism. Okay? All right. Ray, sometimes we create problems and sometimes we don't. Sometimes they're beyond our control. Okay, so happiness. Let's move on to the subject of this talk, which is happiness and humanism's obsession with happiness. The pursuit of happiness actually forms the core of the humanist philosophy. A web page on humanism I found when I was putting this talk together had the following definition of humanism. Humanism focuses on maximizing our happiness here and now, rather than waiting for an intangible afterlife that has never been proven. Our pursuit of happiness is central to what helps us want to be good human beings. Consider these quotes from Humanist Manifesto number 2. And for those of you who are new, we have 3. They were written about 30 years apart each. The latest one was just, I think, in 2003. Anyways, Humanist Manifesto number 2. Happiness and the creative realization of human needs and desires, individually and in shared enjoyment, are continuous themes of humanism. The second quote is that we further urge the use of reason and compassion to produce the kind of world we want, a world in which peace, prosperity, freedom, and happiness are widely shared. Pretty much anytime you read anything about the philosophy of humanism, the word happiness is probably going to be in the document somewhere. It really is central to the philosophy. So, hold on. So why are humanists so concerned with happiness? The answer is linked to, obviously, what we mean when we use the term happiness. Happiness is obviously an emotional state, and it's therefore a bit vague in its definition. But when humanists talk about happiness, we're not talking just about the pursuit of idle pleasures, though we're not opposed to the pursuit of idle pleasures. We're really not. You want to pursue idle pleasures? You go right ahead. But when we're pursuing happiness, what we're talking about is that we want a deep-seated feeling of well-being. Like, if you don't want to call it happiness, that's fine. Call it contentment. That's another good word for it. But the end-all, be-all of this is one of those things you need to feel to understand. And here's the really important part. Most people want to experience it, but have no idea how. Now, I don't want to give you the impression that we humanists are happy all the time, because we're not. No one can be happy all the time, and that's not a realistic goal to have. Humanism is simply a reality-based philosophy that focuses on practical ways to improve our lives and the lives of others. In other words, we do our best to accentuate the positive and to eliminate the negative. What you really need to know is that the humanist pursuit of happiness isn't selfish. It's not hedonistic. No, it's not like Prozac. One of the reasons we pursue happiness is because we believe that by pursuing happiness, we can help make the world a better place. We're actually focused not just on our own well-being, but on the well-being of others as well. We know that we can't be happy unless the society, we can't thrive and really be content in life. Okay, so compassion helps make you feel happy. Think about it. If you're angry, if you're frustrated, if you're self-centered, you're not feeling love in those moments, and you're not feeling very good either. When you exercise and practice compassion, you're experiencing pleasant emotions. And that's a good thing. That's always a good thing. For example, you're dealing with clerks in a crowded store. We all experience this over the holidays and sometimes other times as well. You're rushed. How do you choose to deal with the crowd and with the very stressed out clerks? Do you approach them with frustration because you're going to be late? Or do you approach them with compassion? And how do these two different approaches feel? Like, I know for me, I don't like to feel all the frustration. I mean, sometimes it's unavoidable, but I would rather feel the compassion in that situation. I'd rather remind myself, okay, can't control this, too many people, let's just be compassionate with everybody here and we'll get through this. Here's the really important question you need to ask yourself, though. Which of these two approaches, the frustration or the compassion, makes you feel like a better human being? It's really hard to feel good about yourself and to be happy. Yay, Jesus has blessed me. Thank you. That's very nice of you. And very nice of Jesus, too. Okay, so how do these two make you feel? Compassion, because compassion is such a wonderful emotion to feel, that's reason enough to practice it. All right? But the other reason for being compassionate is that it's impossible to be a good person without also being a compassionate person. And it's really hard to feel good about yourself if you aren't a good person, if you know that you're not a good person, because you're not behaving up to your own good standards of decent, moral, ethical, compassionate behavior. Being good is all about morality, but not just any morality, a morality based on compassion for others. In other words, a human-based morality, commonly known as humanism. Drug abuse. Troll, I don't know what you're on about. Okay. Steve Pinker, in his book, The Blank Slate, talks about how the evolution of morality is really just the extension of human compassion to wider circles of interest. We know not to harm members of our family because we understand that they will hurt. Oh no, Petrol! No, I'm not the lady struggling with drug abuse and doing daily vlog on here. No, that's not me, Petrol. I've never had a drug abuse problem at all. Ever. It might have been. I do have an evil twin. I did have an evil twin. Okay, we're getting off topic. It wasn't me. Okay, so Steve Pinker in his book, The Blank Slate, talks about how the evolution of morality is really just the extension of human compassion to wider circles of interest. We know not to harm members of our family because we understand that they will hurt, just like we will. And as we grow in our learning, we find that we expand our compassion from the immediate family to the tribe, and from the tribe to increasingly wider groups of others. For humanists, this expansion of who we consider compassionately includes every human being on the planet, every single one of them, even the jerks. And for me, this is the main reason why I like the word humanism to describe the philosophy. We care about all members of the human family and not just some smaller subset. And far from being a burden, feeling compassion for everyone on the planet feels wonderful. It really does. It's just like responsibility. You may think that skirting your responsibilities will help you be happy, but it won't. It's just going to cause you some problems. And you may think that feeling compassion for every human being on the planet, including the jerks, is just too much responsibility. But it isn't. It's the key to being, I know, compassion overload, right? It's the key to being a truly happy, contented person, all right? And it's not compassion overload. When you experience it, it changes everything, and it's not a burden. You think before you go that route that it would be a burden. It's really not. It just feels really good. And yeah, it does mean that you feel responsible and you need to start working on it. Compassion for humanity, for all of humanity, is the key to a better future. Humanists hold that we cannot transcend our current problems such as racism, genderism, and theocratic disputes without transcending the tribalism that is at the root of those views. And that requires compassion. You have to recognize your fellow human beings as real human beings, and once you do that, compassion should follow. This is all about personal responsibility. And it's not abstract. It's really tangible once you put it into practice. And Petrol and Miss Amy, I am going to ban. Yep, I know. Sorry, guys. You're being distracting. This is not abstract. It's really quite tangible once you put it into practice. Here's a quote from Ramona Anderson. People spend a lifetime searching for happiness. They're looking for peace. They chase idle dreams and addictions, religions, even other people, hoping to fill the emptiness that plagues them. The irony is that the only place they ever needed to search was within. I would argue that one of the main reasons why people are still participating in religions and cults is, despite not entirely believing in the stuff that they're practicing, is because they're looking for happiness. And I truly believe that people would be much happier if they engage productively with the world as it really is, and not as the world as they're hoping it would be. And that's why I decided to write my book and to talk to people about humanism and our approach to happiness. Because finding happiness is a worthy goal in life. Because happiness can only be achieved through freedom. Freedom can only be achieved through responsibility. And responsibility is most effective at contributing to happiness when it's in the service of compassion. From the humanist perspective, helping people learn how to be happy without the baggage of cults and other forms of woo, the supernatural mumbo-jumbo stuff, would literally help make the world a better place. Not perfect, mind you, but better, and that's at least something. Freedom, responsibility, and compassion. These are the keys to the humanist approach to happiness. And these are the principles that underlie most of the issues humanists think are important. A woman's right to choose. Why do humanists care about a woman's right to choose? Freedom, responsibility, compassion. Civil rights and human rights? Freedom, responsibility, compassion. Church-state separation. Freedom, responsibility, compassion. Scientific autonomy. Why do we care about that? Freedom, responsibility, and compassion. Democracy. Freedom, responsibility, compassion. Challenging oppression, freedom, responsibility, and compassion. It drives everything we do as humanists. Life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. It's concise. It clearly articulates the concerns of humanists and therefore our mandate as humanists. And I think as humanists we need to not be shy about talking about this. Because when we do, people go, yeah, this is what I was looking for. I don't have to have the baggage that comes with religion to get to accomplish that. And this is why humanism is primarily a secular philosophy. Let me define secular, since most people don't know what that word means. Secular is the opposite of sacred. Humanists are not concerned with contemplating the divine. We're concerned with the practical business of living life and getting through life. It's not that we don't appreciate art and the sublime, because we do. We just want to actually solve our problems. And we feel that relying on supernatural intervention to make your life better, for humanists, that's the same thing as leaving your fate up to chance. It really is. Our approach is practical. If you want to pray for rain to water your field, you go right ahead. But if that's all you're going to do, you're leaving your fate up to chance. If you really want to make sure your field gets water so that you don't starve, you probably should irrigate your field. You're probably going to have to take a human approach to solving this problem. All right, and that's the difference between secular and sacred. Humanists are not concerned with the sacred. We're looking for secular, real-life what can we do now to improve things, solutions. This metaphor, this idea of taking it into your own hands, goes with children too. If you have a sick child, you can go ahead and pray for your sick child all you want. But if you want to change the odds that your child's going to get better, you may want to take them to a doctor. All right. Now, this is not foolproof. We know we can't control everything. All right. And we shouldn't be trying to control everything. But we can change the odds we're playing against. Right. So, drunk driving. If you never drive drunk, that doesn't mean you're not going to get in an accident. But if you don't drive drunk, you're going to reduce the odds that you get in an accident because of drunk driving. So all we're trying to do by making good decisions is change the odds against us. And that's actually really, really powerful. If you can change the odds a little bit in your favor, you're going to be so much farther ahead than people who are just playing the game of life at chance. Now, there are some things you can impact, and there's others you can't. And I was asked to include this little bit into the talk because a lot of stress in humans comes from when we're in a situation we can't control and we're trying to control it. And you have to kind of know the difference between the two. What can you impact? What can't you impact? And having the wisdom to know the difference. And this is why I like the serenity prayer so much. Just take the word God out of it and you have a really good statement of a humanist approach to trying to solve your problem. For the things you can change, like the odds of getting into a bad accident by not drinking and driving, your task is to work productively to change the odds in your favor. But there's other things you don't have control over. For example, I was the victim of a stalking. Okay, I didn't have any control over this guy who was, hassling me. In order to not go crazy in those situations where you have no control over what's going on, you need to accept when something is beyond your control. And obviously, knowing the difference between the things you can control and those which you don't is key. It's what gives you balance. It's why, give me the wisdom to know the difference, right? And this is why humanism, when you look at our literature and you join our groups, this is why humanism is so big on science and so anti-woo. Let me define woo in case you're not familiar with it. It's woo-woo. It's pseudoscience. It's theological non-science. It's the stuff that sounds good, but hasn't been proven. Those wristbands for balance, for instance, are a bit of woo. We don't want the placebo. We don't, because that's the same as keeping it up to chance. We want to actually solve our problems. So knowing when something is real and when something isn't real is super important. We need to know whether something like rain is within our control or outside of our control, because until we know that, we can't even begin to solve our problems effectively. This is one of the main reasons why humanists reject prayer as a way to solve our problems. We know that the best way to get something done is for someone to do something. Our practical approach, though, it's not just helping us solve our problems. Here's the really cool part about it. When we take responsibility to get things done, that's when we find deep happiness, deep feelings of contentment. It's empowering to decide to take control of your life, and it feels great. Our actions, whether we like it or not, have consequences. Sometimes those consequences are good, and sometimes those consequences are bad. If we take responsibility for our actions and their consequences, we can choose to act in a way that maximizes our happiness and the happiness of the people around us, and we can choose to minimize the harm. It's not always going to work, but like I said, changing the odds has a huge impact. From Humanist Manifesto number 3, which is the one that was put out in 2003, working to benefit society maximizes individual happiness. The Buddha says, happiness comes when your work and words are of benefit to yourself and to others. And for me, this is the key to the humanist approach to happiness. Humanism isn't just concerned with being responsible for ourselves. That's just part of it. True happiness comes when you extend your feelings of responsibility to others. And this is why in my writing you'll find I write a lot about the topic of compassion. And that's because for me, when I think about humanism and I think about humanist morality, compassion is our guiding light. This is how we decide what's good and what's bad, is our feelings of compassion. When it comes to happiness, personal happiness and societal happiness, being responsible is only going to help lead you to happiness if it's guided by compassion. Compassion is the moral value. It's the emotion that should be ruling all your other behaviors and values. It comes as no surprise to a humanist to find that compassion is the basis for most of the moral codes on the planet. And yes, I recognize a lot of these codes are religion-based, but I'm a non-believer. I'm an atheist. I've been an atheist since I was a little girl. For me, I look at those religious codes and I think, well, someone obviously invented them. Human-based, exactly. Someone invented them and gave supernatural pushes to them for emphasis. The important thing is that everybody around the world is recognizing compassion as very, very important, or most people anyways. Compassion is considered one of the most important values you can have. And every study that's ever been done on global ethics has backed this up. It doesn't matter where you live, how you were brought up. Chances are, if you had to choose the top 3 values, you're going to choose being ethical, being compassionate, and being responsible. And if you had to choose one, you'd choose compassion. It doesn't matter what your religion is. It doesn't matter where you grew up. People all over the world value compassion. All right, so humanists are not unique in that, obviously. What is unique to the humanist approach is that we don't ascribe our compassion to a higher power. We think it's a good in and of itself. We don't need to give it supernatural emphasis. Here's the hitch about compassion, though. Compassion has to be exercised and applied to be useful. I know it's shocking. It's shocking. But if you don't apply compassion and practice compassion, you're going to have a hard time being a happy person. It's not enough to talk the talk. You have to walk that walk. His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, says, if you want others to be happy, practice compassion. If you want to be happy, practice compassion. Now, there's 2 aspects to compassion that make it such an important ingredient to personal happiness. The first is that compassion is motivated by love, and love is a wonderful emotion to feel. It just feels good to feel loving. Love and its public expression through compassion helps you